On a frozen cliff, three violent men thought fear would keep them untouchable. They were wrong, because that night, they crossed paths with a former Navy SEAL and a silent German shepherd who did not shout, did not chase, and did not forgive evil lightly. No fists were thrown, no blood was spilled, but justice began moving the moment they chose the wrong target. This is a story about karma that comes quietly, about strength that waits, and about how real justice does not scream. It stands its ground. If stories of courage, faith, and quiet redemption matter to you, share this video with someone who needs hope today. Leave a comment below and subscribe to the channel so you never miss stories where humanity still wins. Break time. Threes. Figures in the snow. Duluth, Minnesota. Winter pressed down on Duluth with heavy snow and wind cut sharp from Lake Superior, turning every breath into frost and every sound into silence. Ethan Walker lived at the edge of that silence. His cabin sat near the frozen harbor, weathered wood darkened by years of cold, the windows glowing faintly at night like tired eyes refusing to close. At 40, Ethan was tall and broad-shouldered, his frame still strong despite the stiffness in his left knee. That injury had followed him home from war, a reminder that some battles never truly end. His face was angular, defined by a square jaw and a straight nose, with a trimmed beard threaded with early gray at the temples. His brown eyes were calm most days, even warm when spoken to. But when something felt wrong, that warmth vanished, replaced by a sharp, measuring focus. People who knew that look did not linger. Ethan had once been a Navy SEAL. He rarely spoke about it, not out of shame, but because words felt small compared to memory. He had learned discipline under fire, learned how power could be restrained rather than wasted. When the war ended for him, he chose quiet instead of bitterness. He fixed boats when work came, helped neighbors when needed, and avoided attention whenever possible. At his side moved Rex. Rex was a 5-year-old German shepherd, black and tan, built solid and lean, muscles shifting smoothly beneath his thick coat. His ears stood alert, his amber eyes always watching. He wore a black harness with white lettering that read, "Service Dog. Do not pet." The message was clear, and Rex enforced it without a sound. Rex did not bark unless there was reason. He communicated through posture, through stillness, through the subtle tightening of his body when danger crept too close. Around Ethan, he was calm, even gentle. Around strangers with bad intent, he became something else entirely. That night, Ethan and Rex followed a narrow trail along the cliffside overlooking the frozen lake. The moonlight reflected off the snow, turning the world pale and unreal. Ethan's breath steamed as he walked, boots crunching softly. His knee ached, but he ignored it. Pain was familiar, predictable. Rex stopped, not abruptly, deliberately. His ears snapped forward, his head lowered slightly, his weight shifted. Ethan felt it before he saw it. A change in the air, a pressure that pulled his attention outward. He followed Rex's gaze. Ahead, near the edge of the cliff, stood a woman. She was in her early 30s, slender and slightly taller than average, her posture rigid with fear. Her dark hair was pulled back loosely, strands whipped free by the wind. Snow clung to her coat and lashes. Her skin was pale, not just from the cold, but from terror held too long. Behind her were 3 men. They were broad and unsteady on their feet, reeking of alcohol and recklessness. One wore a stained hoodie stretched tight across his chest. Another had a shaved head and a crooked grin. The third kept glancing around, nervous, but not enough to leave. Their voices were loud, careless, echoing against the rock face. The woman took a step back. There was nowhere left to go. Ethan did not move forward. He stood where he was, one hand resting lightly on Rex's harness. Rex did not growl. He did not bare his teeth. He simply stood, body aligned with Ethan's, eyes locked on the men. One of the men noticed them. His laughter faltered. His grin faded. "Hey," he called out, trying to sound amused. "Just out for a walk." Ethan said nothing. Silence stretched. Snow fell. The wind howled across the cliff. The men shifted uneasily. Something about the stillness unsettled them. The way the tall man stood without fear. The way the dog did not move at all. Rex's gaze never wavered. Ethan took one slow step forward. That was all. To Ethan, it was nothing. To the men, it was a warning carved into the air. They had seen threats before. Loud ones, drunk ones. This was different. This was controlled, measured, dangerous in a way they did not understand. A Navy SEAL did not need to announce himself. A trained dog did not need to bark. The woman turned her head slightly, eyes wide, searching for hope where none had existed seconds before. She saw Ethan's face, calm, focused, unmoved by chaos. Behind her, the cliff waited. The men hesitated, and in that hesitation, something shifted. Balance, fate, consequence. Winter had a way of revealing truth, and in that frozen moment, the truth was clear. They had chosen the wrong place, the wrong night, and the wrong man to stand against. The line between life and death. The men did not leave. They hesitated, glancing at one another, emboldened by numbers and alcohol. Snow gathered on their shoulders as if the night itself was weighing them down, urging a decision. The tallest of the three took a step forward, boots sliding slightly on the ice. His face was rough and unshaven, jaw thick, eyes bloodshot. Years of small crimes and smaller consequences had taught him to push until someone broke. "Mind your business," he muttered. Though his voice lacked conviction, Ethan Walker did not answer. He advanced one single step. It was not aggressive. It was deliberate. His posture remained relaxed, shoulders squared, hands visible. The movement carried no threat in the usual sense. Yet every instinct the men had screamed warning. Ethan's gaze locked onto them, steady and unblinking, the gaze of a man who had learned how fast life could end. Beside him, Rex moved in perfect synchrony. The German shepherd stepped forward the same distance, muscles tightening beneath his coat. His head stayed level, ears high, amber eyes fixed on the man with the knife. Rex did not growl. He did not bare his teeth. His stillness spoke of training, of control honed through repetition and discipline. One of the men laughed nervously. "Relax," he said, waving a hand. "Dog won't do anything." Rex shifted his weight. That was all. The man's laughter stopped. The woman at the edge of the cliff gasped as the wind surged again, nearly stealing her balance. She was tall and thin, her frame trembling from cold and fear. Her dark hair clung to her face, damp with snow. Her coat was too light for the night, her hands bare and red. She had the look of someone who had run until running no longer mattered. Only survival. The man with the knife stepped closer. The blade caught the moonlight. That was when the ice betrayed him. His boot slid. His body lurched sideways. He collided with the woman, and for one terrible second, both of them tipped toward open space. The sound she made was sharp and raw, torn from deep in her chest. Ethan moved. Pain flared through his left knee as he lunged forward, the old injury screaming in protest. He ignored it. His hand closed around the woman's arm, fingers biting into fabric and flesh. He planted his feet hard, boots scraping against ice, muscles straining. The world narrowed. Wind, snow, weight. Rex reacted instantly. He surged ahead, placing himself between Ethan and the remaining two men, body angled, stance wide. His presence was no longer neutral. It was unmistakable. A warning that had reached its final form. The men froze. They saw it then. Not just the dog, but the man behind him. The restraint, the precision, the way neither seemed hurried. Despite the chaos, they understood something vital. If they crossed this line, there would be no shouting, no drama, just consequences. Ethan pulled the woman back from the edge, dragging her onto solid ground. She collapsed against him, breath hitching, fingers clutching his coat as if it were the last anchor in the world. Her skin was icy through the fabric. Her pulse raced beneath his grip. "Stay still," Ethan said quietly. His voice was calm, low, carrying authority without force. The man with the shaved head took a step back, then another. The third man followed, eyes darting between Rex's unblinking stare and Ethan's steady posture. None of them wanted to be the one who tested what would happen next. They turned and ran. Their boots slipped and slid as they disappeared into the snowfall, swallowed by darkness and distance. No threats, no insults, just fear driving them away. Silence returned. Rex remained where he was, watching the empty trail, ready for a return that never came. Only when Ethan rested a hand briefly on his harness did Rex relax, though his eyes never fully softened. The woman sagged against Ethan, shaking. "My name is Claire," she whispered, words barely audible over the wind. Her voice was hoarse, strained from screaming or silence. He could not tell. Ethan nodded. "You're safe now," he said. He helped her to her feet, steadying her until she could stand on her own. She was pale, her lips tinged blue, exhaustion etched into every line of her face. Yet her eyes held something else now. Shock, yes, but also disbelief, gratitude struggling to form around fear. She looked at Rex, then back at Ethan. They were going to... Her voice broke. "They're gone," Ethan said. "That's all that matters." He did not chase the men. He did not shout after them. Justice, to him, was not about punishment in that moment. It was about prevention, about drawing a line that could not be crossed without cost. The wind eased slightly, as if the night itself had released a held breath. Rex sat down beside them, silent and watchful. The cliff remained. The danger had passed, but the boundary had been drawn. The woman was saved. Ethan's cabin felt smaller with another person inside, as if the walls themselves were learning a new shape. He led the woman in first, holding the door while Rex followed close, his nails clicking softly on the wooden floor. Snow melted off boots and coats, leaving dark prints that steamed faintly in the warmth. Ethan moved with practiced efficiency, shrugging out of his navy winter coat and hanging it by the door, then setting a log into the stove and striking a match. The fire caught quickly. Light filled the room, amber and steady, pushing the cold back inch by inch. The woman's name was Claire Monroe. She stood near the table, shoulders hunched, arms wrapped around herself as if bracing against another unseen wind. Claire was in her early 30s, tall and slender, with dark brown hair pulled into a loose knot that had come undone during the struggle. Strands clung to her pale cheeks. Her skin held the faint sallowness of someone who worked too many nights under fluorescent lights. There were shadows beneath her eyes, deepened by fear rather than fatigue alone. She wore practical shoes and a hospital-issued jacket beneath her coat, the fabric thin and worn. Her hands trembled, fingers red from the cold. "You can sit," Ethan said quietly, nodding to the chair near the stove. She obeyed without question. Rex settled beside her, not touching, not crowding. He lay down with his body angled outward, a living barrier between Claire and the door. His ears flicked occasionally, tracking sounds beyond the walls. His presence was unmistakable, calm, controlled, and absolute. Ethan filled the kettle and set it on the stove. He did not ask questions yet. He understood shock. He understood the need for silence before words could form safely. Claire watched him from the chair, her gaze following the slight limp in his step, the way he favored his left knee without acknowledging it. She took in the lines of his face, the square jaw, the neatly trimmed beard touched with gray. There was weariness there, but not weakness, a restraint that felt intentional. "You didn't chase them," she said after a moment, her voice soft and uncertain. Ethan poured hot water into 2 mugs, adding coffee grounds with a steady hand. "No," he replied. "They ran." Claire nodded slowly, as if committing the answer to memory. She wrapped her hands around the mug when he offered it, inhaling the steam as if it might anchor her to the present. "They've been hanging around the hospital parking lot," she said. "Not every night, just enough to make people afraid." Ethan leaned against the counter, listening. "I work nights," Claire continued. "It's quieter. I thought that made it safer." Her voice tightened at the last word. Rex lifted his head slightly at the change in her tone, eyes flicking to her face before returning to the door. Ethan noticed. Claire noticed too. "He knows," she murmured. "He watches," Ethan said. "That's his job." The words were simple, but the meaning carried weight. Rex was not a pet. He was a presence, a reminder that violence could be met and stopped without spectacle. Claire took a slow sip of coffee, color returning faintly to her cheeks. "I kept telling myself they wouldn't do anything," she said, "that if I ignored them, they'd get bored." She shook her head. "That was a lie I needed to believe." Ethan said nothing. He had told himself similar lies once, in a different life, under a different sky. After a while, Claire stood. She tested her balance, then straightened, despite the fear still clinging to her. There was a quiet resolve in the way she lifted her chin. "I should go," she said. "I don't want to be a burden." "You're not," Ethan replied. He walked her to the door. Rex rose immediately, positioning himself between Ethan and the outside world, scanning the darkness beyond the window. Claire paused, turning back. "You didn't have to help me," she said. "Most people would have walked away." Ethan met her gaze. "Most people don't see the line until it's crossed," he said. "I do." She nodded, understanding more than the words alone conveyed, before stepping into the cold. Claire hesitated once more. "Thank you," she said quietly. "You didn't just save me." She searched for the right phrase, then let it go. "You reminded me that good doesn't always shout." Ethan watched her disappear down the trail, Rex standing beside him until she was gone from sight. Later that night, the cabin returned to silence. Ethan sat alone by the fire, the warmth pressing against memories he usually kept buried. He bowed his head, hands clasped loosely, and for the first time in years, he prayed. Not for forgiveness, not for answers, for strength to keep choosing restraint. Outside, the wind howled. Inside, Rex lay at his feet, eyes open, guarding the quiet. An unexpected comeback. The lake had begun to thaw in narrow seams of dark water when Claire returned. Weeks had passed since the night on the cliff. Winter still ruled Duluth, but its grip had loosened just enough to reveal what lay beneath. Ethan noticed the change first in the harbor, then in himself. Silence had returned to his days, yet it no longer felt complete. The knock came just after dusk. Ethan opened the door to find Claire standing on the porch, snow dusting her coat. She looked different, straighter, calmer. The fear that once hollowed her eyes had retreated, replaced by resolve. She wore a dark wool coat fitted neatly at the waist, practical boots, and gloves tucked under one arm. Her hair was pulled back into a low braid, glossy and controlled. Her skin still held the pallor of long nights, but there was strength now in the way she met his gaze. "I need to talk," she said. Rex appeared at Ethan's side at once, his posture alert but measured. He studied Claire briefly, then relaxed. Recognition settled in him without ceremony. Ethan stepped aside. Inside, Claire removed her coat and stood near the table, hands clasped tightly in front of her. The fire crackled softly. Rex lay down beside Ethan's chair, closer than usual, his body angled toward the door. Claire took a breath. "The men from that night," she began. "They're not just drunks looking for trouble." Ethan waited. "They work for someone," she continued. "A small group operating near the harbor. They threaten women, take money, silence, people who won't pay." Her voice did not waver, though her fingers trembled slightly. "I've seen them before," she said. "At the hospital. Women come in bruised, shaken. They say they fell. They say nothing." She swallowed. "So did I." Ethan felt the weight of her words settle between them. He had learned long ago that violence thrived on quiet compliance. He had also learned what it cost to break it. "Why tell me?" he asked. Claire met his eyes. "Because you didn't look away," she said. "And because they won't stop unless someone draws a line they can't cross." Rex lifted his head, ears forward. The name of danger had a sound, even when spoken gently. Claire pulled a folded envelope from her bag and placed it on the table. "Names, locations, patterns," she said. "I've been keeping notes for years." Ethan did not touch the envelope. "I won't fight them," he said calmly. "I know," Claire replied. "That's not what I'm asking." She stepped closer. "I want to go to the police. But they need more than my word. They need someone who won't be intimidated, someone who understands restraint." Her eyes flicked to Rex, "and someone who reminds men like them that consequences exist." Ethan looked down at his hands. The old ache stirred in his knee, a phantom echo of a life he had left behind. He had sworn never to return to that world, never to let violence shape him again. Rex rose and moved closer, pressing his shoulder lightly against Ethan's leg. The gesture was subtle, grounding, not a command, a reminder. Ethan exhaled slowly. "I'll stand with you," he said. Nothing more. That was enough. The next days unfolded quietly. Interviews, statements, long hours in plain rooms with bad lighting. Claire spoke carefully, her voice steady, her words precise. She described threats, payments, faces she could never forget. Ethan said little. He sat beside her, silent and immovable. Rex remained at his feet. In one interview room, a detective named Mark Ellison joined them. Ellison was in his late 40s, broad-shouldered, with a thick mustache and tired eyes that had seen too much and trusted too little. He studied Ethan closely. "You military?" Ellison asked. "Former," Ethan replied. Ellison nodded, understanding more than he said. When suspects were brought in for questioning, their demeanor shifted the moment they saw Ethan and Rex. Smirks faded. Voices lowered. One man's hand shook visibly as his eyes locked on Rex's harness. No threats were made. None were needed. The men understood restraint when they saw it. They understood that crossing this boundary would bring consequences measured and final. Ethan did not raise his voice. Rex did not move. The threat lay in their presence alone. When it was over, Claire stood outside the station, breathing deeply as if testing freedom for the first time. "They're scared," she said quietly. "They should be," Ethan replied. That night, Ethan walked home with Rex through falling snow. The harbor lights reflected dimly off the ice. He felt no triumph, only certainty. Justice had not come through force. It had come through refusal. Winter is no longer cold. Winter loosened its grip without ceremony. It did not vanish overnight. It simply stopped biting as hard. The arrests came quietly. Warrants were served before dawn. Doors were opened by men who had run out of places to hide. The network that had thrived on fear along the harbor collapsed under the weight of its own records. Accounts traced. Payments exposed. Stories that had once been whispered now spoken plainly. There was no blood. There were consequences. Ethan Walker watched the news from his cabin. The screen muted. He did not need commentary to understand what had happened. He recognized the pattern. Pressure applied without noise. Lines drawn and held. Justice carried out by people willing to stand in place long enough for truth to surface. Rex lay at his feet, head resting on his paws, eyes half open. Even at rest, he remained alert. The black harness hung by the door, cleaned and ready, a symbol understood by more people now than before. Ethan returned to his routine. Morning walks through the snow, work at the docks when needed. Long evenings split between silence and thought. But something had shifted. The cabin no longer felt like a retreat. It felt like a place people could find. Claire came by on Sundays. She arrived without announcement, parking her car at the edge of the trail and walking the rest of the way. She looked healthier now. Color had returned to her face. Her posture was upright, confident. She still wore practical clothes, still favored comfort over appearance. but there was ease in her movements that had not been there before. She brought bread once, soup another time. Nothing extravagant, just presence. Rex greeted her calmly, sniffing her gloves before stepping aside. Acceptance without ceremony. They talked sometimes, about work, about the lake, about nothing at all. Other times, they sat in silence, watching snow fall outside the window. Ethan found he did not mind either. One afternoon, as they walked near the harbor, a man crossed the street to avoid them. He was young, broad-shouldered, with a shaved head and nervous eyes. He glanced at Rex's harness and then at Ethan's face. Recognizing something he could not name, Ethan felt it. The unspoken understanding. He did not stop. He did not stare. He kept walking. The man disappeared into an alley. Heart pounding, lesson learned. Rex never looked back. Stories spread the way they always do, slowly at first. Then all at once, people spoke of a former SEAL and his German shepherd who walked the harbor trails at dawn, of a man who never raised his voice, of a dog who never needed to bark. They said trouble avoided that stretch of the city now, not because of fear alone, because of certainty. Ethan understood what he had become without choosing it. A boundary, a reminder, not a vigilante, not a hero, simply a presence that made lines visible. One evening, Claire stopped at the door before leaving. "You're staying," she said, not as a question. "Yes," Ethan replied. She nodded. "That matters," she said. After she left, Ethan stood for a long moment, listening to the quiet. He thought of the war, of men he had lost, of choices he could never undo. He had spent years believing redemption required suffering. Now he knew better. Redemption required restraint. Outside, the snow began to fall again, softer this time. Rex rose and padded to Ethan's side, pressing lightly against his leg. The old injury twinged, but the pain no longer defined him. Ethan rested a hand on Rex's head. They stood together, watching winter fade into something gentler. The city slept, and the harbor remained peaceful. Sometimes, miracles do not come as thunder or light from the sky. Sometimes, they arrive quietly, through the hands of someone who chooses restraint instead of rage, courage instead of silence. That winter in Duluth, God did not stop the storm. He placed the right man and the right dog in the right place at the right moment. Not to punish, but to protect, not to destroy, but to draw a line evil could not cross. In our daily lives, we may never stand on a frozen cliff, but we all face moments where fear asks us to look away, and faith asks us to stand still and do what is right. If this story touched your heart, share it with someone who needs hope today. Leave a comment below and tell us what faith means to you in hard times. And if you believe stories like this still matter, please subscribe to the channel. May God bless you, protect you, and place light in your path, just as He does for those who choose goodness, even when the world feels cold.